You're too broke to even breathe the same air as those people. The words hung in the kitchen like smoke. James Warren's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth, instant coffee going cold in his chipped mug. Across the cramped space that barely deserved to be called a kitchen, Sophia stood with her back to him, pouring coffee into a travel mug with hands that trembled just slightly. She wore burgundy today, that dress she'd bought last month that cost more than their grocery budget. She hadn't asked permission. Hadn't needed to. They'd stopped being a team somewhere along the way. 4 years. 4 years of watching the woman he'd married transform into someone he barely recognized. And if you somehow managed to show up at that wedding, Sophia continued, still not turning around, her reflection ghost-like in the window above the sink, you stay the hell away from me. You don't talk to me. You don't even look at me. Do you understand? James set his spoon down with deliberate care. The gold-embossed invitation sat on the counter between them like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Derek Chen's wedding invitation. His best friend, the man who'd given him $50,000 12 years ago when James had nothing but an algorithm coded in a dorm room. The same Derek who'd watched that investment become $100 million. The same Derek who knew exactly who James Warren really was. It has my name on it. James kept his voice level, neutral. 4 years of practice made it easy now. 4 years of playing poor had taught him patience he'd never had as a billionaire. Sophia spun around and for a moment, just a flash, he saw the girl from the coffee shop. The barista who'd drawn a smiley face in his cappuccino foam 4 years and 3 months ago. The one who'd laughed at his stupid jokes about algorithms and asked what made him happy, not what he did for money. That girl had loved him. Had married him in a courthouse ceremony with $20 rings from a pawn shop because the jewelry didn't matter when you had everything else. But that girl was gone now. Had been dying slowly since Sophia started working for Victoria Hartwell 2 years ago. I don't care if it has your name. Her voice pitched higher. That's a $2 million wedding, James. There will be senators there. CEOs. People who actually matter. You'll show up in your Goodwill suit, reeking of cardboard and failure, and everyone will know that I married a... She stopped herself. Bit down on the word before it could escape. But James heard it anyway in the silence. Loser. Failure. Mistake. His first marriage had taught him what happened when love was built on bank accounts instead of character. Natalie had loved his money so obsessively that when he'd finally refused to be her personal ATM, she tried to destroy him. Called him abusive on national television. Claimed she'd built his company with her emotional labor. The divorce had cost him $200 million and every ounce of faith he'd had in finding genuine connection. So he'd run an experiment. Disappeared from his billionaire life. Got a job at a warehouse he secretly owned through shell companies. Rented this cramped apartment. Drove that beat-up Honda in the parking lot. Became nobody. And for 2 perfect years Sophia had loved nobody. Had been happy with cheap date nights and homemade dinners and Sunday mornings in bed where they talked about dreams instead of bank statements. Then Hartwell and Associates happened. Suddenly Sophia was surrounded by wealth every day, planning million-dollar weddings for people who treated money like oxygen. Her boss Victoria became a twisted role model, showing her what life could be if only her husband wasn't such a disappointment. The comparison started. The shame crept in. The walls built themselves brick by brick until this morning, when they'd finally become insurmountable. I'm what, Sophia? James stood now, all 6 feet of deliberately maintained warehouse worker physique. Say it. I'm too broke to what? Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't the right kind of tears. Not sadness. Shame. The same shame she'd been carrying for 3 months, ever since the miscarriage she still hadn't told him about. The 8-week pregnancy that had ended in a clinic bathroom while James was at the warehouse. The $4,000 hospital bill that Victoria had paid while Sophia cried in gratitude. James knew. Had known since the day it happened because their real insurance, the insurance with no deductible, the kind billionaires carry, had automatically been contacted by the clinic. He'd been waiting for her to tell him. Waiting for her to trust him with her pain. She never did. And now he understood why. She'd been too ashamed to admit her husband couldn't afford to save their baby. Except he could have. Could have paid that bill 1,000 times over. Could have flown in the best doctors in the world. Could have done anything except what he'd actually done. Nothing. Because James Warren, billionaire, didn't exist. Only James Warren, warehouse worker, was real to her. You're too broke to breathe the same air as those people, Sophia whispered, the words breaking like glass. I can't be seen with you. I can't keep pretending we're building something when we can barely pay rent. I can't keep lying about why my husband works at a warehouse and drives a car older than our marriage. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. Their rent was paid from a trust fund. That car was fully owned. The warehouse job generated more in passive income each week than most people made in a year. But Sophia didn't know any of that because James had needed her not to know. Had needed to see if love could survive poverty before he revealed that poverty was just an illusion. 4 years of testing, and he finally had his answer written across her face in shame and resentment. Something cold and final settled in James's chest. A door closing on a relationship that had already died. He'd just been too stubborn to admit it. Understood. One word. 4 years of marriage reduced to 7 letters. He grabbed his jacket, Target clearance rack, purchased deliberately despite the $15,000 Tom Ford suits in a storage unit across town, and walked toward the door. James, wait. Uncertainty flickered in Sophia's voice now, some instinct warning her she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But James didn't turn around. Didn't give her the satisfaction or the weapon of seeing whatever expression had taken over his face. Just walked out, letting the door close with a soft click that felt more devastating than any slammed door ever could. In the hallway, James pulled out his second phone. Not the cracked Android Sophia knew about, but the iPhone 15 Pro Max he kept for his real life. One call. That's all it would take. Miguel Rodriguez answered before the first ring finished. Is it time? Execute plan revelation. James's voice sounded foreign to his own ears. Flat. Empty. Tomorrow at the wedding, Sophia's going to learn exactly who she married. And what she threw away, Miguel added quietly. His COO had been playing warehouse manager for 4 years, watching this experiment unfold. You're sure about this? Public humiliation isn't. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share and subscribe for more interesting videos. She humiliated herself, James interrupted. I'm just giving her the truth she should have had from the beginning. Maybe I'm the villain here, Miguel. Maybe testing someone's love is its own kind of abuse. But right now I don't care. Right now, I just want her to see what she became. He ended the call and stared at the gold-embossed invitation still clutched in his hand. Derek's wedding. Table 1. Seated between the governor and the Microsoft CEO. Every tech giant and venture capitalist in the state would be there. All of them knowing exactly who James Warren was. All except his wife. His phone buzzed. Text from Sophia. I didn't mean it like that. We can talk tonight. James typed back. See you at the wedding. Or don't. Your choice. Then he walked down to that beat-up Honda Civic and drove toward the Four Seasons, where a $15,000 tuxedo and his real life were waiting. Tomorrow the experiment ended. Tomorrow Sophia would stand at that wedding as a coordinator managing rich people's happiness. And James would walk in as one of the wealthiest men in the room. 4 years of questions were about to get very expensive answers. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and decade-old linoleum. James sat at the scarred table picking at a sandwich he'd made at 5 a.m., surrounded by the usual crew, Tony, Marcus, and Deshawn. These men had become real friends over 4 years. They didn't know they ate lunch with a billionaire every day. That was the entire point. Yo, Warren, you catch the game last night? Marcus unwrapped a sandwich his wife had packed, meatloaf on white bread with too much mustard. Lakers got destroyed in the fourth quarter. Absolutely demolished. James was about to answer when Miguel Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. His face had that expression, the one that meant the performance was about to break character. Warren. My office. Now. The crew erupted in theatrical groans. Oh, someone's in trouble? Tony slapped the table hard enough to make the salt shaker jump. What did you do, man? Forget to punch in? Miguel's gonna write you up for sure. James stood slowly, playing his part one last time. Probably nothing. You know how he gets about the schedules. He followed Miguel down the concrete corridor lined with OSHA safety posters and weekly production charts. Miguel's office sat at the far end, and the moment the door closed, everything changed. Miguel's shoulders straightened. His voice lost the working-class effect he'd been maintaining for 4 years. So she finally said it. Miguel leaned against his desk. Mahogany, expensive, wrong for a warehouse manager but perfect for a Stanford MBA who ran a logistics empire. She actually said you're too broke to breathe. James sank into the visitor's chair, suddenly exhausted in a way 4 years of manual labor had never made him. Word for word. Then told me to stay away from her at the wedding if I showed up. Miguel exhaled slowly through his teeth. Damn, brother. 4 years of this. Are you absolutely certain you want to detonate this bomb at Derek's wedding? You could just file quietly. Give her a settlement. Walk away clean. James thought about that coffee shop on 5th Street. How Sophia had spelled his name wrong on the cup, James with a Z, and then laughed about it, cheeks flushing pink. How she'd asked him what made him happy, not what his job title was. How they talked for 3 hours after her shift ended, sitting on a bench in Washington Park watching joggers and dogs and life happening around them. She told him about growing up poor in rural Ohio, about her father leaving when she was 8, about wearing thrift store clothes while rich girls mocked her. She'd vowed never to be poor again, and James had understood that. Had respected it. But somewhere between that bench and this morning's kitchen, Sophia had forgotten the difference between never being poor and worshipping wealth. No, James said finally. She needs to see what she became. And I need to see if there's anything left worth saving. Miguel pulled a manila folder from his desk drawer, slid it across the cheap veneer surface. Your tux is being delivered to the Four Seasons. Presidential suite, already booked under your real name. Your car's detailed, the Rolls, not the Honda. And Derek seated you at table 1. Right between Governor Bradford and Sarah Chen from Microsoft. James opened the folder. Inside, his real driver's license with his real net worth indirectly attached to every database that license touched. His black Amex card that had no spending limit. Documentation of who James Mitchell Warren actually was. Tech billionaire, Synapse Core founder, the man who'd revolutionized machine learning and then vanished into deliberate obscurity. She's going to have a complete breakdown, James said quietly. That's the point. Miguel's voice carried something heavy. But what if she chooses the money when she sees it? What if she tries to play it off like this morning never happened? Like she knew all along? James stared at a photograph in the folder. Him and Derek at the Synapse Core launch party 6 years ago. Black tie event at the Fairmont, champagne fountains, everyone treating him like he'd invented fire. Natalie had been on his arm that night in a dress that cost $12,000, playing the devoted wife for cameras. 18 months later, she was on CNN with carefully applied tears calling him emotionally abusive, financially controlling, a monster who'd stolen her best years. The divorce had cost him $200 million and taught him that some people could look at love and only see dollar signs. Then I'll know I wasted 4 years on an illusion, James said. And I'll have my answer about whether genuine love actually exists or if everyone's just running calculations about what they can extract. Miguel studied his friend carefully. They'd known each other since college, back when James was coding algorithms in a dorm room that smelled like ramen and desperation. Miguel had believed in the dream before anyone else. Had helped build Warren Global Freight from nothing. Had agreed to this insane 4-year experiment because he understood what Natalie had done to James's ability to trust. Father Brennan called this morning, Miguel said. Wanted me to talk you out of this. Said humiliation isn't the same as education. Said if you really love Sophia, you'll tell her the truth privately, not blow up her world in front of 200 people. Father Brennan married us, James said. He's been counseling me monthly asking if this test is ethical. Asking if I'm punishing Sophia for Natalie's sins. Are you? The question hung between them like an accusation. James wanted to deny it. Wanted to claim this was pure science, objective observation, a legitimate test of character. But 4 years of lying had taught him to recognize lies, even his own. Maybe, he admitted. Maybe I'm just as damaged as she is. Maybe we're both drowning and calling it a marriage. Miguel reached into his desk again, pulled out a small velvet box. This came yesterday. The piece you commissioned 3 months ago. Inside was a necklace, delicate gold chain holding a tiny ultrasound image encased in crystal. 8 weeks gestation. The baby Sophia had lost. The baby she'd never told him about because she was too ashamed to admit her husband couldn't afford the hospital bill. Except James had known since the day it happened. Their real insurance, the comprehensive policy with no deductible that cost more annually than most people's salary, had been automatically contacted by the clinic. They'd left a message on his private line. Professional. Sympathetic. Confirming the miscarriage and the follow-up appointment and asking if Mr. Warren needed anything else. James had waited for Sophia to tell him. Had given her space and time and every opportunity to trust him with her grief. She never did. And 3 months later he'd found out through Father Brennan why. Victoria had paid the $4,000 emergency room bill while Sophia sobbed in gratitude. She was suffering, James said, staring at the crystal-encased image, and I could have helped. Could have paid that bill 1,000 times over. Could have flown in specialists from Johns Hopkins. But my experiment made her believe I was worthless, so she suffered alone. That's not your fault, James. She chose not to tell you. Because I made her ashamed. James's voice cracked. I spent 4 years making her believe we were barely surviving when I could have given her everything. How is that different from what Natalie did to me? I manipulated Sophia's reality. I'm not the victim here, Miguel. I might be the villain. Miguel let the silence stretch. Outside, forklifts beeped. Workers shouted coordinates. The warehouse hummed with ordinary life while two men sat in an office confronting the consequences of playing God with someone's heart. So what happens tomorrow? Miguel finally asked. James closed the velvet box with a soft click. Tucked it into his jacket next to the folder. Tomorrow I walk into that wedding as myself. The real me. And Sophia gets to decide if she wants the man or the money. If she can forgive the test or if the test destroyed everything we had. Either way the experiment ends. And if she walks away? If she can't forgive what you did? James stood, straightened his cheap jacket, prepared to return to the loading docks and spend the afternoon moving boxes in deliberate poverty. Then I'll have my answer about love. And it'll be the most expensive answer I've ever bought. Miguel walked him to the door, gripped his shoulder. For what it's worth, the James Warren I've known for 15 years, the real one, isn't the billionaire or the warehouse worker. You're the guy who tips 50% even when nobody's watching. Who remembers everyone's kids' names. Who built a company that treats employees like humans. That James is worth loving. The question isn't whether Sophia can love you. It's whether you can forgive yourself for testing her. James nodded, throat tight. How do I look? Convincing. You've got packing tape residue on your jeans and you smell like cardboard. Very convincing. Miguel smiled sadly. I'm going to miss this version of you. The guy who eats lunch with the crew and doesn't mind getting dirty. That version's not fake, James said. That's who I actually am. The suits and the rolls and the tables at the governor's right hand, that's the costume. This is real. Then maybe you need to figure out which version Sophia fell in love with, Miguel said. And whether that version can forgive her for this morning. James walked back into the warehouse, returned to his station, spent the afternoon loading pallets while his mind ran calculations that had nothing to do with logistics. By the time his shift ended at 4, he'd made his decision. Tomorrow Sophia would see the truth. All of it. The money, the deception, the test, the hurt. And then they'd both find out if love could survive being drowned in lies. Even lies told with good intentions. The Hartwell and Associates office occupied the 15th floor of Millennium Tower, all glass walls and designer furniture that screamed success without having to say a word. Sophia sat surrounded by 3 monitors, each displaying a different aspect of the Chen wedding. Seating charts, vendor schedules, minute-by-minute timelines. Her fingers had been hovering over Table 1's seating arrangement for 20 minutes, unable to make sense of what she was seeing. James Warren. Or James. Seated between Governor Bradford and Sarah Chin, the Microsoft VP. Had to be an error. Some database glitch or administrative confusion. Maybe Derek had a college roommate named James Warren. Maybe there was a second invitation sent to the wrong address. Maybe. Sophia, darling, we need to discuss Table 1. Victoria Hartwell materialized in her doorway like she always did. Silent, observing, judging with eyes that had watched 1,000 weddings and 1,000 marriages crumble under the weight of money and expectations. At 53, Victoria had that ageless quality that came from excellent genetics, better surgeons, and the kind of confidence that only generational wealth provided. She wore authority like other women wore perfume. What about it? Sophia kept her voice steady, professional, the tone she'd perfected over 2 years of trying to earn even a fraction of Victoria's approval. That's the VIP table. Derek's immediate family, the governor, key investors. There's a James Warren on the list. Victoria's voice had that particular edge that meant she'd found something delicious. Derek was extraordinarily specific about his placement. Insisted he sit between the governor and the Microsoft VP. Do you know anyone by that name? The temperature in the room dropped. Sophia's fingers froze over her keyboard. She could lie. Should lie. Claim ignorance and change the subject and deal with this confusion privately. But Victoria's eyes were already calculating, assembling puzzle pieces into a picture Sophia couldn't quite see yet. That's my husband. The words came out barely above a whisper. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. For her, the equivalent of gasping in shock. Your warehouse worker husband is seated at Table 1? Victoria moved into the office now, closing the door behind her with a soft click that felt ominous. With the governor? With the CEO of Microsoft's AI division. Sophia's mind raced through explanations. Maybe James had lied about his job. Maybe he'd been doing something else these 4 years. Maybe he had some secret second life she didn't know about. But no, She'd visited him at work. Had seen him in that ugly break room with his crew. Had smelled the cardboard and sweat on his clothes when he came home exhausted. Had watched their debit card decline at the grocery store just 3 weeks ago. There must be a mistake. Maybe Derek confused him with someone else. I can fix it. I'll call Derek's assistant Anne. Derek doesn't make mistakes. Victoria's voice lost its warmth entirely, replaced by something colder and infinitely more real. I've worked with him for 8 years on events worth more than some country's GDP. When Derek Chin wants someone at table 1, there's a reason. She paused, let the words sink in like poison. And Sophia, I've been in this business for 20 years. When a nobody gets seated at table 1, it means they're not a nobody. You might want to ask your husband who he really is. I know exactly who my husband is. The words exploded out too loud, too defensive. He works at a warehouse on Industrial Boulevard making $19 an hour. He drives a 2009 Honda Civic with a broken air conditioner. He buys his clothes at Target clearance sales. I know who he is. Victoria studied her with the same expression she used when examining flower arrangements that weren't quite right. Clinical, detached, already planning the fix. Behind her eyes, Sophia could see recalibration happening. Pity shifting into something else. Curiosity. Or worse, amusement at watching someone's life quietly detonate. Then this weekend should be very interesting. Victoria moved toward the door, then paused. Sophia? A word of advice from someone who's seen every kind of marriage this city offers. Rich men do strange things sometimes. Test people. Play games. If your husband really is seated at table 1, you might want to consider what that means before you walk into that venue. She glided away on Louboutins that cost more than Sophia's monthly rent, leaving behind the faint scent of Chanel No. 5 and existential dread. Sophia stared at her monitors. Her hand hovered over her phone. She should call James. Demand answers. Scream at him for whatever game he was playing. But something stopped her. Pride maybe. Or fear of what those answers might reveal. Instead, she opened a new browser tab. Typed James Warren Tech Billionaire into Google with trembling fingers. The results flooded in. Thousands of articles, but most were 4 to 5 years old. And in every photograph, the tech billionaire James Warren's face was carefully turned away from cameras or obscured by other people. Reclusive genius avoids spotlight. Synapse Corp founder refuses all interviews. The invisible billionaire. Where is James Warren now? Her chest loosened slightly. See, just a coincidence. Her James couldn't be this person. The articles all mentioned someone older, someone established in tech before her James would have even graduated college. But then she noticed the dates more carefully. For years ago, every article stopped. The tech billionaire James Warren had given one final interview to Wired magazine 4 years and 2 months ago, then vanished completely. Deleted social media. Stopped taking meetings. Refused every interview request. The article speculated about burnout, about a breakdown, about wanting privacy after a brutal divorce. 4 years and 2 months ago. Right before Sophia had met her James at that coffee shop on 5th Street. Her phone buzzed. Text from Victoria, FYI, confirmed with Derek personally. Your James Warren stays at table 1. No changes. Also, Derek wants to speak with you tomorrow morning before the wedding. 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. V. Sophia's hands were shaking now. She pulled up the seating chart again, zoomed in on table 1. Each guest had a small note attached. Titles, affiliations, net worth estimates, reasons for placement. She'd made these notes herself weeks ago based on Derek's specifications. She clicked on James Warren's name. The note read, founder and former CEO, Synapse Corp Technologies. Personal friend of Groom since graduate school. Net worth EST $2.1 billion. Special handling required. Do not approach without Groom present. The room tilted. Sophia grabbed the edge of her desk, forcing air into lungs that had suddenly forgotten how to work. This was insane. Impossible. Her James, the man who'd asked her last month if they could skip buying coffee out to save $15 a week, couldn't be worth $2 billion. Unless everything was a lie. She thought about their apartment. The second-hand couch they'd bought off Craigslist. The single bedroom where the heating barely worked in winter. The way James had apologized 3 weeks ago because they couldn't afford to go out for their anniversary, suggesting instead that they cook pasta at home and watch a movie. The embarrassment in his eyes when that debit card declined at Safeway last month and she'd had to cover the groceries with her credit card while other shoppers watched. Unless none of it was real. Unless all of it was a test. Her phone rang. James. She stared at his name on the screen, Just James with no photo, no heart emoji, nothing romantic. When had she stopped putting hearts next to his name? When had she started being ashamed of him? She didn't answer. Instead, she opened her email and searched for the original guest list Derek had sent 3 months ago when Sophia had first been assigned this wedding. She scrolled through 200 names until she found it. James Mitchell Warren, Synapse Core Technologies, personal guest of groom, table 1 placement mandatory per groom's explicit instructions. The middle name. Mitchell. James had never told her his middle name. In 4 years of marriage she'd never thought to ask. She pulled up their marriage certificate from the county records database, hands shaking so badly she mistyped her password twice. There it was, James Mitchell Warren, age 32 at time of marriage, occupation listed as technology entrepreneur. Not warehouse worker. Not laborer. Entrepreneur. She'd never actually read their marriage certificate carefully. Had been too happy that day, too in love, too certain that money didn't matter because they had each other. She'd signed it in a rush, laughing about how official it felt, joking that Mrs. Warren sounded like someone who owned a mansion. When had that changed? When had she started measuring their life in dollars instead of moments? Victoria appeared in her doorway again. Sophia, are you crying? She was. Hadn't even noticed the tears streaming down her face, ruining the makeup she'd spent 20 minutes perfecting this morning. I'm fine. Just stressed about the wedding logistics. Darling, you should go home early. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. Victoria's voice carried something that might have been sympathy or might have been the satisfaction of watching someone else's perfect life shatter. And Sophia? Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that you're exceptionally good at your job. You've earned your place here on merit. Don't let personal drama undermine your professional reputation. After Victoria left, Sophia sat alone as the sun set over the city skyline. Around her, the building emptied out. Colleagues called cheerful goodbyes, heading home to families and normal lives. Elevators dinged. The cleaning crew arrived. Life continued with ordinary momentum while Sophia's world quietly imploded. She thought about this morning. The cruelty in her voice when she told James he was too broke to breathe near important people. The way his face had shifted, something dying behind his eyes that she'd been too angry to notice properly. The quiet way he'd said understood and walked out. If this was true, if James really was one of the wealthiest men in America, then she just told a billionaire he was worthless. And if it wasn't true? Then this was all some terrible mistake, and tomorrow would simply be humiliating instead of devastating. Her phone buzzed. Text from James, I'm respecting your wishes. See you at the wedding. Or not. Your choice. Sophia stared at those words for a long time. Something about the phrasing felt wrong. Not the James she knew. He was always apologetic, always trying to smooth things over, always working to make her happy even when she made it impossible. This James sounded like someone else entirely. She typed back, we need to talk. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Then disappeared. Finally, tomorrow. After the wedding. You're working, remember? Wouldn't want to be a distraction. The phrasing was surgical. Precise. Using her own words from this morning against her. Sophia grabbed her purse, her laptop, her phone. She had to get out of this office before she fell apart completely. Had to go home and think and figure out what was happening. But when she stood up, her reflection in the dark window caught her attention. She looked successful. Put together. Exactly the kind of woman who belonged in this office, at these events, around this kind of wealth. She also looked like a stranger. Somewhere between that coffee shop 4 years ago and this glass tower, Sophia had transformed into someone she didn't quite recognize. Someone who measured love in tax brackets and judged her husband's worth by his paycheck. When had that happened? When had Victoria's voice gotten louder in her head than her own? She left the office without turning off the monitors. Drove home to their apartment in a daze. Walked inside expecting James to be there, but the apartment was empty. Just a note on the kitchen counter in his handwriting, staying at a friend's place tonight. See you tomorrow. No signature. No, love. Just those 2 sentences. Sophia sat on their second-hand couch and finally let herself fall apart. Great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Crying for reasons she couldn't quite articulate. Grief for something she couldn't name. Tomorrow she'd find out if her husband was a liar or if she'd been married to a billionaire for 4 years without knowing it. Either way, everything was about to change. The Four Seasons presidential suite was approximately 4 times the size of the apartment James had been living in for 4 years. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the kind of view that cost $15,000 per night. The bathroom had a separate shower and bathtub, both marble, both larger than the bedroom he'd been sharing with Sophia. The closet, and it really deserved to be called a dressing room, currently held a $15,000 Tom Ford tuxedo that fit him like it had been grown on his body. Because it had been custom tailored. His exact measurements on file at Tom Ford headquarters from back when James Warren wore suits that cost more than cars. James stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing himself. 4 years of deliberate poverty had changed him in small ways. His hands were more calloused, his face slightly more weathered from loading dock work, his posture just a touch more hunched from constant physical labor. But the man in the tuxedo looked like the old James. The real James. The billionaire who'd revolutionized machine learning and then run away from everything success had cost him. The Patek Philippe watch on his wrist was worth $450,000. More than some houses. More than Sophia had earned in the past 3 years combined. There he is. James turned. Derek Chin stood in the doorway of the suite, eyes suspiciously bright. His best friend since graduate school. The man who'd believed in him when everyone else thought machine learning was science fiction. The man getting married tomorrow. The real James Warren, Derek continued, voice thick. God, I've missed seeing you like this. Feels like a costume now. James adjusted the cufflinks, platinum, engraved with his initials, purchased a lifetime ago. The warehouse clothes feel more real. That's because you're an idiot. Derek moved into the suite, followed by Miguel. The warehouse was the costume, brother. This is who you actually are. Miguel closed the door behind them. How are you feeling? Really? Like I'm about to destroy my marriage in front of 200 people. James turned back to the mirror. Is Sophia at the venue? Arrived 2 hours ago, Derek confirmed. She's in the coordinator's suite with Victoria, managing last-minute preparations. Sophia has no idea what's about to happen. I've kept this tighter than our series of funding documents. What's her assignment tomorrow? Guest services. She'll be greeting VIPs as they arrive, managing any issues, ensuring everything runs smoothly. Derek's smile was equal parts sympathetic and mischievous. Which means she'll be standing right at the entrance when you pull up in the Rolls. Miguel whistled low. You're really going for maximum drama, aren't you? This isn't about drama. James's voice came out harder than intended. This is about truth. 4 years of lying ends tomorrow. She gets to see who I actually am, and then she gets to make a real choice. Not based on tests or games or experiments. Just truth. Is it truth, though? Derek settled into one of the suite's leather chairs. Or is it revenge for what she said this morning? The question landed like a punch. James wanted to deny it. Wanted to claim moral high ground and pure intentions. But 4 years of self-examination had taught him to recognize his own bullshit. Maybe both, he admitted. Maybe I'm just as damaged as Natalie made me. Maybe I turned into the villain while trying to avoid being the victim. Your ex-wife really did a number on you, Miguel said quietly. James thought about Natalie. How she'd loved his money so completely that she'd forgotten to love him. How she'd spent 5 years playing the perfect wife while secretly resenting every moment he spent working instead of spending. How the divorce had been televised and vicious and designed to extract maximum value while causing maximum pain. Natalie taught me that some people see relationships as transactions, James said. I wanted to know if real love existed. If someone could choose me at my lowest instead of my highest. And did you find your answer? Derek asked. This morning, Sophia told me I was too broke to breathe near important people. James's jaw clenched. So yes, I found my answer. A knock at the door interrupted them. Father Thomas Brennan entered in full vestments. He was officiating Derek's wedding tomorrow. The priest had known James since childhood, had married him and Sophia 4 years ago, had been counseling him monthly about whether this experiment was ethical or just elaborate self-destruction. James? Father Brennan's voice carried weight. We need to talk. I just overheard something at the venue that you need to know. The room went silent. James felt his stomach drop. What did you hear? I was blessing the bride's preparation room when I heard Sophia and Victoria talking in the hallway. Father Brennan's face was grave. Sophia said she's planning to file for divorce after this weekend. Said this wedding is her bridge to a better life. That she's going to network, make connections and leave you behind. The words hit James like a physical blow. Miguel swore quietly. Derek looked stricken. How long? James's voice came out barely above a whisper. She mentioned documents. Said her lawyer told her to wait until after the wedding to avoid any drama that might affect her job. Father Brennan moved closer. James, she also mentioned Victoria paying for a hospital visit 2 months ago. Something about you not being able to afford a copay. James's vision tunneled. What hospital visit? Miguel and Derek exchanged glances. They didn't know either. I don't know the details, Father Brennan continued, but Victoria said something about being there when it mattered, while you couldn't even cover basic medical expenses. The miscarriage. Had to be. But that was 3 months ago, not 2. Unless there had been follow-up appointments. Unless Sophia had been dealing with complications and he hadn't known because she was too ashamed to tell him. James sat down hard on the bed, the expensive tuxedo suddenly feeling like a straitjacket. 4 years of playing poor, and his wife had been suffering through medical issues alone because she believed he couldn't help her. 4 years, James said to no one in particular. I gave her 4 years to see me. To really see me. And she was counting down the days until she could leave. So what do you want to do? Derek leaned forward. We can call this off. You can divorce her quietly, give her a settlement, never see her again. James thought about that bench in Washington Park. How Sophia had told him about growing up poor, about being mocked for wearing donated clothes, about vowing she'd never be poor again. He'd understood that. Had respected her drive. Had thought his test would prove that she'd grown beyond measuring life in dollars. But maybe people didn't grow beyond their childhood wounds. Maybe they just pretended to until the wounds opened up again. No. James stood, adjusting his cufflinks with hands that had stopped shaking. We proceed exactly as planned. But this isn't about teaching her a lesson anymore. This is about showing her exactly what she's throwing away. And making absolutely certain she understands that she did this to herself. Miguel looked worried. James, if you do this out of anger instead of love. Maybe I'm doing it out of both. James cut him off. Maybe that's the most honest thing I've done in 4 years. His phone buzzed. Text from Sophia. If you show up tomorrow, we're done. I mean it. James stared at those words. She was threatening him. Giving him an ultimatum. Drawing a line and daring him to cross it. He typed back, see you there. Father Brennan spoke up, voice heavy with concern. James, I can't support you using my wedding ceremony as a stage for revenge. If you're doing this to hurt her. I'm doing this because she deserves the truth. James turned to face the priest. For 4 years I've lied to her. Let her believe we were struggling when we weren't. Let her suffer when I could have helped. That was wrong, Father. I know it was wrong. But walking away now without showing her the truth? That's worse. She needs to understand what she's been married to. What she chose to reject. And after? Father Brennan pressed. After she sees who you really are? What then? Then she gets to make a real choice. Stay with the billionaire or leave. Love me or love the money. Either way, she'll finally have enough information to decide based on truth instead of lies. Derek stood, straightened his own tuxedo. For what it's worth, I think you're both broken people who broke each other. Tomorrow isn't going to fix that. I know. James's voice was hollow. But at least tomorrow we'll both stop pretending. The men stood in silence for a long moment. Outside, the city glittered in the darkness. People lived their ordinary lives, loved their ordinary loves, never knowing that 15 floors above them, a man was preparing to detonate his marriage in the most public way possible. The car arrives at 4:30, Miguel finally said. Ceremony starts at 5. You'll pull up right as guest arrivals peak. Maximum visibility. Good. James looked at himself one final time in the mirror. The billionaire stared back, polished and powerful and completely hollow inside. Let's give Sophia the truth she's been asking for. Even if she doesn't know she was asking. Father Brennan placed a hand on James's shoulder. God forgives us for the harm we cause, even when we can't forgive ourselves. Remember that tomorrow, son. Whatever happens. After they left, James stood alone in the presidential suite, surrounded by luxury he'd been denying himself for 4 years. The tuxedo. The watch. The view. The life he'd abandoned to find real love. Tomorrow that abandonment ended. Tomorrow James Warren stopped hiding. And tomorrow Sophia would learn that the man she'd called too broke to breathe was actually one of the wealthiest men she'd ever meet. 4 years of questions were about to get very expensive answers. Eastwood Manor Estate sat on 50 acres of manicured perfection. The kind of venue where weddings started at $50,000 and went up from there depending on how much ego needed to be displayed. Sophia had been here since 6 a.m., managing a team of 40 people to ensure everything was flawless. $2 million bought a lot of perfection, but it also bought a lot of anxiety. At 4:45 p.m., 15 minutes before ceremony start, Sophia stood near the main entrance in her burgundy coordinator's dress, tablet in hand, greeting arriving guests. This was the part of the job she usually loved. Watching powerful people arrive, seeing wealth displayed in custom tuxedos and designer gowns, feeling like she was part of something important. Today she felt like she was standing on a trapdoor waiting for someone to pull the lever. She'd barely slept. Had spent the entire night Googling variations of James Warren Billionaire, and finding nothing conclusive. The tech billionaire had vanished 4 years ago. Her James had appeared 4 years ago. The math was suspicious but not proof. This morning, Derek had called her into a private meeting. Had looked at her with something like pity and said, "Sophia, I need you to know that everything happening today is by my design. Whatever you see, whatever surprises you, trust that I care about both you and James. And trust that sometimes the truth is kinder than comfortable lies." Then he'd left before she could ask what the hell that meant. A Ferrari pulled up. A Bentley. A Tesla. Sophia greeted each guest with practiced professionalism, checking names against her list, directing them inside. Senators. CEOs. Venture capitalists. The kind of people who made decisions that affected millions of lives before lunch. The kind of people James had said were too important for him to breathe near. Except he'd never said that. She'd said that. She'd said he was too broke to breathe their air. The memory made her physically ill. 4:52 p.m. 8 minutes until ceremony start. Most guests were already inside, finding their seats in the garden where 200 white chairs faced an altar covered in orchids that cost more than Sophia's monthly salary. Then she heard it. A sound that made every head turn. A Rolls Royce Phantom murdered out in black so perfect it looked like it was absorbing light. Not reflecting it. Consuming it. The car moved up the drive with the kind of silence that only extreme engineering could create. Other guests literally stopped mid-conversation to watch. Even the valet stood straighter. The driver, professional black suit, the kin of person who'd been driving important people his entire life, exited smoothly and moved to the rear passenger door. Sophia's tablet slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers. It hit the marble with a crack that sounded catastrophic. The door opened. Out stepped James Warren. Except it wasn't the James she knew. This James wore a tuxedo that looked like it had been engineered rather than sewn. Perfect. Immaculate. The kind of fit that only happened when someone flew tailors to your location. His hair was professionally styled. His posture was different, straighter, more confident, radiating the kind of authority that came from knowing you were the most powerful person in any room. And on his wrist, catching the late afternoon sun, a watch that Sophia's brain couldn't even process the value of. She didn't know watches could cost that much. Didn't know metal and complications could represent more money than houses. James walked toward the entrance in slow motion, or maybe time had actually stopped. Sophia couldn't tell anymore. Other guests whispered, "Is that James Warren? The James Warren? I thought he was dead." "No, just reclusive. Word is he's worth over $2 billion now. That's the Synapse Core founder, he revolutionized machine learning. I heard Microsoft tried to hire him for $200 million a year and he turned them down." Sophia stood frozen. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Her brain was trying to process information that didn't fit into any schema she'd built over 4 years of marriage. James walked right past her without breaking stride. Didn't look at her. Didn't acknowledge her existence. Just handed his invitation to the actual door attendant. A distinction Sophia suddenly understood. She was staff. He was a guest. Not just any guest. "James Warren," he said, voice carrying just enough for her to hear. "Table 1. He disappeared inside. Sophia couldn't breathe. Literally could not make her lungs work. People were staring at her now. Victoria appeared from nowhere, grabbed her arm. "Sophia?" Sophia breathed. "Is that your husband?" I don't, that can't be." Words failed. Language failed. Reality failed. An older woman in a gown that probably cost $60,000 turned around. Sophia recognized her from the seating chart. Margaret Chin, Derek's mother. Prominent attorney. Old money. The kind of woman who made Supreme Court justices nervous. "Oh, you're James's wife?" Margaret's smile was warm, genuine, completely oblivious to the bomb she was detonating. "How lovely. We've been wondering when he'd bring you into the fold. Derek's been so secretive about James's experiment. 4 years is a long time to play ordinary, don't you think?" She glided away, leaving Sophia standing in the wreckage of everything she'd believed. Victoria's grip tightened on her arm. "Sophia, what is happening? That's really your husband?" "The warehouse worker. He." Sophia's voice came out strangled. "He doesn't work at a warehouse. Or he does. I don't know. I don't know anything. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. James. Her husband. The billionaire. She answered. You said to stay away from you at the wedding. His voice was different. Colder. The voice of someone who'd spent years being obeyed. I'm respecting your wishes. Enjoy your bridge to a better life, Sophia. The line went dead. Bridge to a better life. He knew. Somehow he knew about her conversation with Victoria. Knew she was planning to leave him. Knew everything. Because of course he did. Because he wasn't actually a broke warehouse worker who couldn't afford to know things. He was a billionaire who could afford to know everything. I'm going to be sick, Sophia said. She ran. Didn't care that guests were watching. Didn't care that Victoria was calling after her. Didn't care about professionalism or her job or anything except getting somewhere private before she completely fell apart. She made it to a bathroom in the staff corridor before the sobs started. Great heaving gasps that shook her entire body. 4 years. 4 years of marriage to a man she didn't know at all. 4 years of pitying him when he was probably pitying her. 4 years of being ashamed of him when she should have been ashamed of herself. Her phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Pull yourself together. You're working. Whatever personal crisis you're having needs to wait. The ceremony starts in 3 minutes and I need you at your post. Sophia looked at herself in the mirror. Mascara running. Face blotchy. Eyes red. She looked like someone whose entire life had just imploded. Because it had. She splashed water on her face, tried to fix her makeup with shaking hands. Took 3 deep breaths that didn't help at all. Then walked back out to do her job. Because she was staff. And James Warren, the real James Warren, the billionaire, was a guest. And somehow that made this morning's words infinitely worse. She told him he was too broke to breathe near important people. He'd been one of the most important people in that room all along. And now he knew exactly what she really thought of him. The ceremony was everything a $2 million wedding should be. Perfect weather. Perfect flowers. Perfect guests arranged in perfect rows. Sophia watched from the back, technically managing guest experience but really just trying not to have a complete breakdown in public. She could see table 1 from her position. Could see James sitting between Governor Bradford and a woman she now knew was Sarah Chin from Microsoft. Could see the easy way he spoke with them, the comfortable body language of someone who belonged in that world. Who'd always belonged. The governor was laughing at something James said. Sarah Chin touched his arm with familiar affection. These were his people. This was his world. And for 4 years he'd pretended otherwise. What? The question circled her mind like a vulture. Why would someone worth billions pretend to be poor? What kind of person did that? The ceremony began. Father Brennan, the same priest who'd married her and James 4 years ago, stood at the altar. Derek walked out with his mother, waiting for his bride. The music swelled. Sophia should have been focused on logistics, on ensuring everything ran smoothly. Instead, she couldn't stop staring at the back of James's head. At the perfect haircut that probably cost more than her car payment. At the tuxedo that fit like a second skin because it had been built for his body specifically. She thought about their closet at home. His 3 shirts from Target. His 2 pairs of jeans. His 1 pair of dress shoes from Payless that he'd worn to their wedding. Had any of it been real? The ceremony proceeded. Vows were exchanged. Rings that probably cost more than Sophia's annual salary were blessed. Father Brennan's voice carried over the garden. Marriage is built on trust and truth. When we hide ourselves from our partners, we rob them of the choice to love us fully. Sophia wondered if that was aimed at her or James or both of them. When Father Brennan said, "You may kiss the bride," 200 people erupted in applause. Sophia clapped mechanically, her mind elsewhere. The happy couple walked back down the aisle, beaming. Guests stood. The ceremony transitioned into cocktail hour. And Sophia still had 4 more hours of work ahead of her. She moved through the crowd, checking on catering, managing vendor questions, ensuring everything flowed smoothly. Professional. Competent. Dying inside. She deliberately avoided table 1. Avoided any chance of running into James. Every time she saw him in her peripheral vision, she changed direction. At one point, she overheard a conversation between 2 tech investors. Warren looks good. Healthier than before he disappeared. 4 years of manual labor will do that. I heard he was actually working at a warehouse. Like actually showing up and loading boxes. No fucking way. Why would anyone worth that much? Testing someone apparently. Derek mentioned it was personal. Something about his divorce from Natalie making him paranoid. Yeah, she really did a number on him. Cost him $200 million and a year of his life in court. Well, whatever he's been doing, he seems different. More grounded. Less intense. The investors moved away. Sophia stood frozen behind a column, processing. Testing someone. He'd been testing her. For 4 years, her entire marriage had been an experiment. The nausea returned. She made it to another bathroom just in time. Sophia found him in the rose garden during cocktail hour. James stood by a fountain, still in that devastating tuxedo, looking at his phone. From this angle, backlit by the setting sun, he looked like someone from a different universe. Not her husband. Some perfect stranger who just happened to have his face. James? He turned slowly. His expression was carefully neutral. Controlled. Nothing like the open, earnest face she'd known for 4 years. Sophia. Her name sounded foreign in his mouth. You're supposed to be working. Are you fucking kidding me right now? She didn't care who heard. Didn't care about professionalism. You're a billionaire? For 4 years you've been lying to me? Playing some sick game while I never lied. His voice was quiet but firm. You never asked. Don't give me that bullshit. You let me believe we were poor. You let me work myself sick while you had, how much? How much money do you actually have? Last quarterly statement? About 2.1 billion. He said it like someone else might say they had $21. Casual. Meaningless. Sophia felt reality tilt again. Oh my God. Oh my God, you're insane. You're actually insane. Maybe. James slipped his phone into his pocket. Or maybe I learned from my first marriage that some people only see dollar signs when they look at me. So I decided to find out if anyone could see me when the dollars weren't visible. His first marriage. Sophia had never really asked about it. He'd mentioned an ex-wife once in passing, said it hadn't worked out, seemed sad about it. She'd never pushed for details. So what, you decided to test me? Like some kind of experiment? Yes. No hesitation. No apology in his voice. After Natalie tried to destroy me in divorce court, after she claimed she'd built my company with her emotional labor, after she spent 5 years playing the perfect wife while secretly resenting every minute I wasn't spending money on her, yes, Sophia, I decided I needed to know if real love existed. By lying to me. By removing money from the equation. James's voice rose slightly. For 2 years you were happy. We were happy. You loved me when I was just James, warehouse worker. You didn't care about bank accounts or status or any of it. Because I thought we were building something together. We were. Or I thought we were. But then you got that job with Victoria, and suddenly I wasn't enough anymore. His voice cracked slightly. Suddenly you started looking at me with disappointment. Shame. This morning you told me I was too broke to breathe near important people. Do you have any idea what that felt like? Sophia's anger faltered. Because he was right. She had said that. Had meant it. I was frustrated, she said weakly. You were ashamed of me. James took a step closer. You stopped introducing me to your coworkers. Started lying about what I did for work. Flinched when people asked about me. I've spent 4 years waiting for you to love me at my lowest, Sophia. And instead you were planning to leave me. Her breath caught. How did you know? Father Brennan overheard you. Said you're seeing a lawyer. Said this wedding is your bridge to a better life. James's eyes were cold now. So tell me, Sophia, who's the real villain here? Me for testing you? Or you for failing? That's not fair. You lied to me from day one. I omitted information. But I never made you be cruel. I never made you ashamed. That was your choice. They stood in silence, 4 years of marriage collapsing into the space between them. Why didn't you tell me? Sophia's voice broke. About the baby. About the miscarriage. About Victoria paying your hospital bill because you thought I couldn't afford it. Sophia felt the ground disappear beneath her. How? How do you know about that? Our real insurance was contacted by the clinic. The insurance I set up 4 years ago that covers everything with zero deductible. They left a message on my private line. James's voice gentled slightly. I've known since the day it happened. I was waiting for you to trust me enough to tell me. Tears streamed down Sophia's face. I was ashamed. We couldn't afford prenatal care. I was using a free clinic. When I miscarried, the ER bill was $4,000 and I knew you couldn't pay it, so Victoria? I could have paid it 1,000 times over. James pulled a small box from his jacket. I had this made 3 months ago. He opened it. Inside was a necklace, a tiny ultrasound image encased in crystal. Sophia's knees buckled. James caught her, held her while she sobbed. You were suffering, he whispered into her hair, and I could have helped. But my experiment made you believe I was worthless. So you suffered alone. That's on me, Sophia. That's my fault. They stood like that for a long time. Two broken people holding each other in a rose garden while a party continued without them. Finally, Sophia pulled back. So what now? You humiliate me in front of everyone? Prove you were right. No. James wiped tears from her face with his thumb. Now I give you a choice. A real choice based on truth instead of lies. What choice? Walk away right now. I'll give you $5 million and a clean divorce. No one ever has to know about this conversation. You can tell people whatever story you want. He paused. Or come back inside with me. Meet my real world. And we figure out if there's anything left worth saving. Sophia stared at him. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. James stepped back, giving her space. But you need to decide right now, Sophia. Because I'm done playing games. I'm done testing. I'm done pretending. Whatever you choose, it has to be real. Sophia looked back at the party, at the wealth and power and everything she thought she wanted. Then looked at James. Really looked at him for the first time in years. And made her choice. Sophia walked back into the reception at James's side. Every head turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. She could feel their eyes, their judgment, their curiosity. James's hand rested on the small of her back. Possessive. Protective. Real. They moved toward table 1. Governor Bradford stood as they approached. James? And this must be Mrs. Warren. We've been dying to meet you. Sophia shook hands with the governor of their state. With the Microsoft VP. With a senator whose face she'd only ever seen on television. They all knew James. All spoke to him with respect and warmth and the easy familiarity of equals. Victoria appeared, face pale. Sophia, can I speak with you privately? No, Sophia said. The word felt powerful. I'm spending time with my husband. She sat next to James. Watched him interact with this world she'd never known existed for him. He was different here. More confident, more articulate, more himself. But also she realized not that different from the James who'd made her laugh at that coffee shop 4 years ago. Same sense of humor. Same kindness to waitstaff. Same way of really listening when people spoke. The difference was she'd stopped seeing those qualities when money became more important than character. During dinner, Patricia Chin leaned across the table. Sophia dear, I owe you an apology. Derek told me about James's experiment. As a mother, I'm not sure I approve. But as someone who's seen many marriages destroyed by money, I understand it. Did you know? Sophia asked. This whole time. For about 2 years. James called me when he was struggling with whether to continue. I told him a marriage built on tests is fragile. But a marriage rebuilt on truth can be unbreakable. Patricia smiled sadly. The question isn't whether you can love him. It's whether you two can forgive each other. Victoria tried 3 more times to pull Sophia aside. 3 times Sophia refused. On the 4th attempt, James stood up. Miss Hartwell, I believe Sophia is off the clock. If you need event coordination assistance, I'd be happy to hire additional support. Victoria's face went through several colors. Mr. Warren, I didn't mean to. I know exactly what you meant. James's voice was polite but cold. You meant to feel superior to my wife because you assumed I was worthless. You've spent 2 years undermining our marriage because it made you feel better about yourself. That ends tonight. He sat back down. Victoria disappeared into the crowd. Derek stood up with a microphone for toasts. His eyes found James and Sophia, and something passed between the 2 men. Understanding. Forgiveness. Friendship. Before I thank everyone for coming, I need to acknowledge someone special. Derek's voice carried across the reception. James Warren, stand up. James stood reluctantly. Applause erupted. This man changed my life 12 years ago. I was a broke grad student with a dream. James was a 26-year-old nobody with an algorithm coded in a dorm room. I gave him $50,000, everything I had. 18 months later he turned it into $5 million. 4 years after that, Microsoft bought his company for $2.3 billion. Gasps from people who hadn't known. Sophia heard someone whisper, that warehouse worker? James gave me $100 million as thanks, Derek continued. No contract required. Just friendship. That's who he is. But then James disappeared. Deleted social media. Stopped taking meetings. I thought he'd lost his mind. Derek's voice softened. He explained it to me. Derek, everyone sees dollar signs now. I want to know if anyone can see me. So he got a job at a warehouse. Rented a cheap apartment. And he met someone, a barista who had no idea who he was. They fell in love. They got married. And for 4 years, James lived as an ordinary man to see if that love was real. Every eye in the room turned to Sophia. She felt exposed. Judge. Naked. That woman is here tonight, Derek said. She's been coordinating this wedding. She's brilliant, hardworking, and until a few hours ago, had no idea she was married to one of the richest men in America. Derek paused. Some of you might think testing love is cruel. Maybe it is. But I'll tell you what I told James. The question isn't whether she passes your test. It's whether you deserve hers. James, you're my best friend. You're the smartest person I know. But you can't build a real marriage on lies and tests. You have to trust. He raised his glass. To my beautiful wife Patricia. And to James and Sophia Warren, may you find the courage to start over with truth. The room applauded. James sat down slowly. Sophia realized she was crying. James stood again, taking the microphone from Derek. Derek just publicly called me out, which is why he's my best friend. Laughter rippled through the crowd. He's right about everything. I tested Sophia because I was afraid. Afraid of being hurt again. But in protecting myself, I hurt her. James turned to face Sophia. I let you struggle when I could have helped. I watched you suffer because I needed proof you'd stay. That wasn't love. That was cowardice. He took a breath. But you owe me an apology too, Sophia. At some point, you stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as a failure. You let people who don't matter define your happiness. This morning, you told me I wasn't worth the air I breathe. The room was silent. Uncomfortable. Everyone watching a marriage implode in real time. So here's what I propose, James continued. We end this marriage, the one built on secrets and shame. And if you want, we start a new one, built on truth. Where I trust you with everything I am, and you trust me with everything you need. No more games. No more pretending. He walked toward her, extended his hand. Sophia Warren, will you give us a second chance? Sophia stood slowly. 200 people held their breath. She took his hand, pulled him close, whispered something only he could hear. James's eyes widened. He nodded. They turned to the crowd together. We'll let you know, Sophia said into the microphone. And they walked out hand in hand, leaving 200 people in stunned silence. The coffee shop on 5th Street hadn't changed. Same chipped counter. Same temperamental espresso machine. Same bench in Washington Park where they'd spent 3 hours talking 4 years ago. Sophia arrived first, carrying a leather portfolio. She'd changed in 6 months, looked more settled somehow. Less polished but more real. James arrived in jeans and a sweater. Expensive but understated. He kissed her easily, comfortably. They sat. How was the board meeting? Sophia asked. Exhausting. They want me to come back full-time. I said consulting only. And Miguel's book? Publisher loved it. The Invisible Billionaire. 4 years undercover in my own company. Releases next month. It's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. Good. Sophia smiled. Maybe it'll make them think twice about treating warehouse workers like garbage. She opened her portfolio. I have something for you. Documents. Plans. Financial projections. The Warren Foundation Youth Opportunity Scholarship. Patricia and I have been working on it for 3 months. $50 million endowment. Full rides for kids from low-income families. No strings attached. James read through it carefully. This is incredible. It's my apology, Sophia said quietly. To you. To myself. To that girl I used to be who thought poverty was shameful. Nobody should have to choose between dignity and dreams. He took her hand. Are we going to make it? I don't know. Some days I'm still angry about the test. Some days I'm still ashamed of who I became. But we're trying. That's all we can do. I quit working for Victoria, Sophia continued. Started my own firm, Warren Events. We plan high-end weddings for clients who treat their vendors like humans. Using my name? Our name. I earned it. Not because you're rich, but because I'm rebuilding myself into someone worthy of it. James pulled out a small box. It's not what you think. Inside, a simple silver ring engraved with truth over tests. I'm not asking you to remarry me. We're already married. But I'm asking you to renew our promise. No more secrets. No more shame. Just us figuring it out. Sophia slid the ring onto her finger next to her wedding band. Truth over tests. They sat in comfortable silence. On the table between them, a framed ultrasound image. Sophia was 14 weeks pregnant. They hadn't told anyone yet. James's hand rested protectively on her stomach. Sophia covered his hand with hers. Outside life continued. Inside, two imperfect people chose each other again.